Welcome back to the Daily News Roundup for February 6th, 2025. It's Wednesday, and we've got a lot to unpack today, from international incidents to some pretty concerning stuff for the environment. Let's just dive right in. First up, President Trump signed an executive order sanctioning the International Criminal Court.
Really big news.
He called it illegitimate.
It's a major development. Yeah, and like you said, right on the heels of the ICC issuing that arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, right, over alleged war crimes in Gaza. So, this is a pretty clear sign of support from the Trump administration for Netanyahu, and it's a pretty direct challenge to the authority of the ICC.
Especially with Netanyahu currently in Washington.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the U.S.'s relationship with the ICC?
Yeah.
Because it's already a little strained.
Right. Well, the U.S. has never actually been a member of the ICC, so this just pushes the U.S. further away from the international community, especially on issues of accountability and justice. I mean, even the Netherlands, where the ICC is based, they've already said that they aren't happy about these sanctions.
The White House is defending the move, though, saying that the ICC issuing warrants for both Netanyahu and a Hamas commander at the same time shows a shameful moral equivalency.
Ooh, that's an interesting argument. It kind of suggests that the U.S. might be more interested in protecting allies than actually making sure that potential war crimes are investigated.
Speaking of controversial things that Trump has said recently, he also mentioned that the U.S. taking over Gaza.
Oh, wow.
After the Israel-Hamas conflict ends, he wants to resettle the Palestinian population and redevelop Gaza and make it prosperous.
I mean, obviously, it's drawn a ton of condemnation from the international community. A lot of people are calling this ethnic cleansing. The logistics of it would be insane, and it would bring up a ton of legal and ethical issues.
Trump says that no U.S. troops would be involved.
Right, but how?
It's tough to see how that's even possible.
Yeah.
Over in Italy, there's a story developing about spyware.
Okay.
It seems like Paragon Solutions, the Israeli company that sells spyware to governments, has cut off access to its Italian clients.
So this is all coming out after these allegations that Paragon software was being used to target people who criticize the Italian government. WhatsApp says the spyware was used against 90 individuals in 24 countries?
At least.
Yeah, at least. Including journalists and activists, so it's not just Italy. It has global implications.
And the Italian government's denying being involved, but they started an investigation. Let's move on to a story about the school shooting in Sweden. More details are coming out about the victims.
It's been confirmed that both Bosnia and Syria have citizens who were killed in that attack. One of the Syrian victims, his name was Salim Iskef. He was only 29 years old, and he had fled the war in Syria a few years ago. He was looking for a better life, a safe place. It's just a horrible reminder about how violence hurts people no matter where you are.
It really is. On a lighter note, there was a canal in Buenos Aires, Argentina, that turned bright red.
Oh, wow.
People were pretty alarmed.
Yeah, so environmental officials think that somebody illegally dumped industrial waste.
It could be textile dye or some other kind of chemical.
It's just one more example of the problems we face trying to keep industry going and protecting the environment.
I hope they can find out who did it and hold them responsible. This next story is kind of funny. This guy in France is fighting a 200 € fine.
Okay.
For taking a call on speakerphone.
What?
At a train station. It turns out there's not a specific law against using speakerphone, but there are rules about noise in public transportation areas. The French railway company is sticking by the fine, but this guy's got a lawyer. He wants to challenge it.
It's an interesting situation. It makes you think about what's acceptable in public spaces. Something that's rude one place might be fine somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay, back in the U.S., a federal judge has temporarily blocked President Trump's plan to encourage federal workers to resign by offering them buyouts.
Right. That was a controversial proposal.
Yeah.
The federal employee unions filed a lawsuit because they thought it was going to hurt the federal workforce and make it easier for the administration to do whatever they wanted.
Yeah. So now the judge has to decide if it should be permanently blocked or not.
Okay.
There's a hearing next week.
Gotcha.
Of course, the White House is saying this just gives federal employees more time to think about the offer.
Right.
But on a more serious note, there's an Israeli soldier that's been sentenced to 7 months in prison for abusing Palestinian detainees from Gaza.
Oh, no.
It's actually the first conviction for abusing detainees in this recent conflict. It's bringing up a lot of concerns about how these prisoners are being treated. The soldier confessed to punching detainees, using his weapon to threaten them.
How they were restrained.
Yeah, and making them say degrading things.
This is terrible. And it makes you wonder what's going on at the Said Timon Military Detention Center and how detainees are treated in general during these conflicts. It really is a terrible situation. And then in other news, Australia just passed some new laws that say if you display hate symbols or commit terrorism offenses, mandatory jail time.
Wow.
It comes after, like you said, that rise in anti-Semitic attacks, arson at a synagogue, a bomb threat at a Jewish school. The government's trying to send a clear message.
Yeah, that these hate crimes will not be tolerated.
Huh.
But, I mean, these new laws, they've also started some debate, right? Some people think they're too harsh and they could, like, go against free speech rights. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. In the meantime, it looks like there's a diplomatic situation brewing between the U.S. and Panama.
Uh-oh.
Over what? Over the Panama Canal.
Oh.
So the U.S. State Department announced that Panama agreed to let U.S. government ships pass through the canal for free.
Okay.
And they said it would save millions of dollars. But Panama's Canal Authority says, nope, not true. We haven't changed any fees or policies.
So what's going on?
It's escalated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, he accused Panama of being influenced by China.
Because China's been investing a lot in that region.
Exactly. It seems like there could be more and more tension between the U.S. and China.
About what?
About who controls these trade routes.
These key global trade routes.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, in South Asia, there are protests breaking out in Bangladesh. About what?
Over the planned virtual address by the deposed Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina from India.
Oh, right. Hasina, she was accused of authoritarianism, corruption, all that.
Yeah. She fled to India last year after those student-led protests forced her out.
And even a virtual appearance is causing all this anger and resentment.
It seems so.
Makes you think about how deep the political divisions run in Bangladesh. And back in the U.S., Google decided to drop its diversity recruitment goals. It's a pretty controversial move.
Yeah.
And it comes after a bunch of other big U.S. companies scaled back their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
Right, their DEI programs.
Seems like there's a big backlash against these initiatives, especially with all the criticism coming from President Trump and his supporters.
Google says they're still committed to diversity and inclusion. They just say they're changing their approach.
I wonder if other tech companies will follow suit.
That'll be interesting to see. Now, President Trump's threat to put tariffs on Canadian goods has been put on hold for now.
For now.
But it's definitely had an impact on the relationship between the two countries. Lots of Canadians feel uneasy.
I bet.
They want to be more economically independent from the U.S. There's definitely some anger and frustration. Some people are even talking about boycotting American products.
Wow. This whole thing has damaged the trust between the two countries. I don't know how long it'll take to repair the relationship. And then you have thousands of USAID employees.
Right.
They might be put on unpaid leave.
Starting this Friday.
It's all part of the Trump administration's plan to change the agency.
Yeah.
They think it's too big, and they want to make it match up with the president's foreign policy goals.
It's getting a lot of criticism from USAID staff and Democratic lawmakers. They say it's going to hurt the agency's ability to deliver aid and help people around the world.
Absolutely. And they're worried that it could hurt U.S. national security by making things unstable in countries that rely on USAI.
That makes sense. Okay, now for something a little different, a story that takes us back in time.
I love those.
Scientists used some really cool technology and digitally unwrapped a scroll that's 2,000 years old.
No way.
From Herculaneum, the Roman town that got buried when Mount Vesuvius erupted.
That's incredible.
It was so delicate, they couldn't unroll it without breaking it.
Wow. So how'd they do it?
They used advanced imaging and AI to basically see inside the scroll without actually opening it.
That is so cool.
They think it's some kind of philosophical work,
So cool.
which could give us a whole new understanding of ancient Rome.
Yeah.
Now, remember that golden pager that Netanyahu gave to President Trump?
Yeah.
Turns out it has a pretty controversial backstory. It was supposed to be about an Israeli operation against Hezbollah. They used booby-trapped pagers.
Oh, no.
And when they exploded, they killed and injured dozens of people.
Including civilians. It seems like kind of a messed up gift.
I know. Some people are criticizing it, saying it glorifies violence.
I get it. It reminds us that even something that seems simple can have all this baggage, especially when it comes to politics. And then there's this other story that everyone's talking about.
What's that?
Elon Musk's growing influence in the Trump administration. He's the head of the new Department of Government Efficiency.
Doge.
Yeah, DOGE.
What exactly does Musk even do there? Is he really the one making all the decisions?
Well, he's definitely been pushing for some big policy changes like the ones at USAA and all the stuff about shrinking the federal government. He wants to make the government more like a business, streamlined and efficient.
But some people are saying his way of doing things is too harsh, that he doesn't get how complicated the government is.
Yeah. And there are also concerns about, conflicts of interest with his businesses and everything.
It's pretty crazy to have someone like Musk with all that money and power in the White House. What does this even mean for accountability? Is it okay to run the government like a business?
It's definitely something new. And then you have to think about their personalities.
Right.
Trump and Musk are both really strong-willed. It'll be wild to see how this all works out. Speaking of wild, remember that guy in France who got fined for talking on speakerphone at the train station?
It seemed like a weird thing to get fined for.
His lawyer's saying that there's no specific rule against using speakerphone, even though there are general noise rules. They think the fine is way too much and the railway company's going too far.
It really makes you think, where do we draw the line with technology in public? What's okay in one place might not be okay somewhere else.
Yeah, it's an important conversation, especially as technology keeps changing and becoming a bigger part of our lives. We have to find a balance between personal freedom and being considerate of other people.
Well, I think we covered a lot today. We talked about international crises, environmental problems, even went back in time a little.
It's been a busy news day, for sure. It just shows you how complicated and connected everything is in the world. We always say it, but really, go learn more about the stories that interested you. There's always something new to discover.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow with more news. Until then, stay curious.